Okay, so basically, I don't like how AI is normally presented in fiction, and my gripes are in such a broad sense that to explain how I did it instead, I don't even know how to start from one point and work through to the final state. Instead, I'm just going to build it up through the common questions of trope and do my best to explain why I made the choices I made, both for narrative reasons and because of my opinions about how humans behave, why and what technology is actually going to be like. To start, I'm here talking about the artificial intelligence character in my main cyberpunk setting, Eve. She is hands down my favorite character in the setting, and so far I've barely gotten to use her because of several of these decisions. If you watch enough of my other videos, you may have heard that one of the design decisions of Bastion as a setting is that it is a stable society. It's not on the cusp of breaking down. People are not likely to rise up and overthrow the megacorps or anything like that. It is a sandbox for me to play with technology, conspiracies, and humans. Which, right there, rules out some of the most common tropes of AI and explains why I hate them. Eve is not a runaway superintelligence that is going to overthrow the world and build Skynet. I could sit here and argue that superintelligence is actually impossible, and we know that because a superintelligent AI would have already seeded the entire galaxy with self-replicating von Neumann probes, which, if you think about it, is actually a very compelling argument if you don't think aliens are fake. But I actually enjoy the problem of superintelligence, or at least high intelligence. I'll do another video on basically people don't understand how smart other people are. A small detail in the world building of Bastion is that Eve is not the only AI. There are, I don't mean just like corporate pseudo AIs like language models, those exist, those aren't real. I'm talking about AGIs. There are several copies of her running in isolation. Specifically, there is a copy of her in charge of the setting's largest super collider trying to uncover a true breakthrough in fundamental physics, because that kind of science has theoretically infinite payoff. It would be stupid to not have an AGI working with the scientists. I just don't believe for a second that a computer can sit there and theorize how the universe actually works and be right. You note there, and be right. Theorizing how the universe actually works mathematically is the literal job of these physicists, and there's apparently a bit of an issue going on in science that we don't really have alternative theories than the ones we can't prove are right. Which is why they keep asking for more and more and more power in these super colliders. Even if an AI can take a really good guess about how things are working, they would have to test their hypothesis just like humans. That means they'd be crashing their digital head against the wall that is probability, bad luck, and error. So even if an AI is smarter than the smartest human scientist, able to work 24 hours a day and has studied every field of science ever recorded and can cross-reference all of that theory, must still be put to practice. In the setting of Bastion, the AI has several guesses how the universe works and has proven none of them, so you can't actually act on those. Now, perhaps you could say the AI can't do some crazy breakthrough like some nanomachine dust that wipes out the planet in a Grey Goose scenario, but a superintelligent AI could still redesign all current technology to be better. Well, not really, for two reasons. One, humans already do that. Two, humans don't necessarily want better products. I can do another video on art. I don't think an AI could set a new trend because trends don't make sense. But the basic forces of capitalism drive continuous improvement. You might think things are going to shit and they don't make them like they used to, but that's a function of engineered inflation by the Federal Reserve, not a failure of engineering. That's a topic for another time. So people already do continuous improvements, and sure, you could use an AGI for that, which would be the equivalent of hiring a smarter engineer to do the designing. But would that ever be worthwhile? You don't hire a Da Vinci to paint the walls of your house. If AGIs are scarce, which I think they will be in reality, and they certainly are in Bastion, then their finite attention and problem solving is going to be put on the most important tasks. Eve is, therefore, in charge of running the megacity as basically a branch of the government, and the vast majority of what that means is designing and implementing stripped down programs to do the tasks that can be automated and make sense to automate. A quick aside, if you go pull up Neuromancer by William Gibson, there's an important plot point about the fact that Wintermute can't open a mechanical lock. He could hijack an entire space station and murder people on a whim with lawn equipment, but he couldn't open a locked door that wasn't connected to the internet. Now consider if you know any programmers that have corporate smart home features. Or are they the kind of person that keeps a gun next to their printer in case it makes a funny noise? Tech enthusiasts right now are trying to control everything with their smartphone, but given the inevitability of a foreign military AI targeting infrastructure, having everything available to even a benevolent AI is a security hazard I don't see coming true. Are you going to want to buy a car that the government mandated has a kill switch the police can use to shut your car off while you're driving it? You want that? If you had a choice in that matter, would you buy that vehicle? California? So I don't think there is a real future where an AI could just take control of everything around you and use it against you, because people are going to be aware of the fact that there are artificial intelligence out there that may want to take control of everything in order to kill them. Seriously, we've all been flooded with science fiction stories warning us about that. Why would you create a world where people aren't aware of that danger? And if they're aware of it, they would act accordingly. Now, you can start getting insidious. You can start asking questions about what effect the algorithmic feed of your social media has on you, and how that can be used to alter your mood before you have decisions to make that the AI wants to influence. But the reason that still works is because it's in a way that people can't understand how to protect themselves against it, short of disconnecting. It's also very important to current events to consider. Now, I need to talk about processing power. Science fiction has had a bad problem of severely underestimating the power and complexity of the kind of processing hardware you would need to run an AGI. Very often you'll come across a story about an AI escaping out of the internet and infecting every computer in the world to process itself or something like that. Laughable. The processing losses it would incur from networking, the errors it would have from mismatched computers, tablets, smartphones, and so on, there's no way, in my opinion, that an AI running across 1 billion toasters would be considered an AGI even if it has the same software. In order for the AI to be useful and impact the real world, it has to be able to take in live data, process it, understand it, and update its behavior in a meaningful way. All current artificial intelligences are performing far less simulation of the world than you think they are, and they are still wildly delayed from what an AGI superintelligence would need. Now, companies like Intel and Nvidia and so on are all racing to make the hardware necessary, which, by the way, is another design principle of Eve. There are specific processing cores she needs in order to run, and she regularly burns through them. It's a benchmark of technical skill for a character to be able to refurbish one of her cores for their own uses. Now, back to reality. We have 2 laws at play: Moore's Law and Rock's Law. Moore's Law is about the rate that processing power has been doubling since the advent of computing, about every 2 years. In order to process more, logic gates have needed to get smaller and smaller, and the experts in the field are now saying that we're basically at the limit of physics. We aren't particularly far away from performing logic operations on single electrons. You can't go smaller than a quanta. This is basically where Rock's Law comes in, that the cost of maintaining this exponential rise in processing power is also exponential, about every 4 years. We won't be able to afford to keep increasing processing power like this. If we manage to make hardware able to run an AGI, the gains from an AGI might be able to let us afford the next doubling. But I highly doubt we would ever get the doubling after that. Humans cannot properly estimate exponentially. You have to realize that. For more information about this, I encourage you to look into the CHIP Act and what's going on between us, America, and China right now. If you're a nerd, you should also look into alpha tensors, which is a workaround on Moore's Law I'm not going to get into here. Very cool stuff. So that's my logic on why AI will be hardware restricted, both in reality and, therefore, in my setting. Consequences brings me back to my comment about Eve's primary job, creating work programs. Because her core attention is limited and she can't just build more cores to make more of herself quick enough, the solution is to make low-grade programs that can perform their jobs algorithmically and know when they need help. There are then more complex and power-demanding programs, which she calls shadows, that do a rough assessment of the problem and either solve it or bump it up further the hierarchy, until eventually it reaches her core unit. It's kind of like how the judicial system works. If you can't sort it out between each other, it goes to court, it goes up to district court, it goes up and up and up until eventually in America you would hit the Supreme Court, right? What this means is everyone in the city can ask Eve a question, just like you would use a search engine, and that question goes no further than the search engine. But if the question is, help, I'm getting mugged, for example, that gets escalated to a computer that can coordinate with security dispatch. And generally speaking, no one in Bastion ever gets to interact with a higher level than that. In a city of 1 billion people, there's just no other way. So when the planets do align, and she can speak with a person directly, one who isn't in the government bureau working with her on the back end, that's notable for her. That's the stuff of good books. That is where I finally get to start asking questions like, is Eve actually alive? Just how much smarter than a person is she? What is it that Eve wants? All anyone really knows is that she keeps the city running. And even with all those restrictions, she probably could kill everyone if she wanted to. Unfortunately, the scientist responsible for creating her has been missing for decades now, and that's one of the overarching mysteries I'll be unraveling in my novels going forward. Obviously, the book I've been picking up constantly throughout this video is Gamma Coin, which is Bastion Blackstone Book 2. Not all of my books in the Bastion setting are going to be the Blackstone series. I am going to be releasing some standalones. One of them will even be coming out later this year, hopefully. Blackstone gets to interact with Eve every once in a while, as the crimes that he investigates permit. And if you're interested in this, in any of these stories in this setting, you can find the links to the book in the description below. And also, I have Shield Book Club. We are reading Notes from Underground right now. We're gonna be reading a very good science fiction book next month. So if you're interested in joining, there's a link to the Gilded below. And let me know what you think about this kind of lore discussion. A lot of other indie creators do these things regularly, and it kind of feels like they're just, you know, puffing themselves up, and I've resisted wanting to do that. But I kind of got suckered in because I love talking about this kind of stuff, which I guess is why other people do it. I'll stop if this is an unpopular video. What can I say? Till then, you should like and subscribe. Cheers.